Tonight we're going to work on a Jeep Cherokee. Well, not that one. That one. This is my brother's 1998 Jeep Cherokee, and it has been sagging down a little bit in the back, and he brought it over because he wants to get that so that he can tow a little bit of a trailer. Eventually, maybe in the future, we're going to lift it, and a lot of the stuff that we run into while we're fixing this problem is the same stuff that you would have if you were trying to lift a Jeep Cherokee. So let's check it out, see what we can do. We're going to find a rust hole along the way that I've also seen in Jeep Cherokees quite often. So maybe this will help you decide how to fix, lift, or maybe just have some entertainment. Thanks for stopping. Let's get to it. It looks like we found at least some of the problems that we were having with the sagging. This is a broken leaf spring. Here I have the bolts on both shackles loose and ready to come out. I've got the U-bolts soaking, but that's not a big deal if we have to replace them. Most of the time people recommend replacing them when you do a job like this anyway. But this one has been these guys right here, and these are notorious for not wanting to come out of there. So I've got the jack on here like this, and I've got it run up, and then I have a mount on there so that I can just push down on that, and it seems to have broken free. If you kind of look closely, you can kind of see there is a little gap starting to develop there, so that should hopefully widen. Now what has happened sometimes is the as that bolt comes out, the bushing in the center of the leaf spring pushes against the side of the body mount, and then it'll eventually, sometimes it can even wallow that hole out and push the whole bushing out because the bolt gets stuck inside the bushing, and then the bushing separates from the rubber, and then it kind of just gets pushed out. So that's a situation that we're hoping to avoid, but sometimes you can't. And when that happens, it sometimes won't come out. Sometimes it'll strip out the inside bolt, and you end up having to cut the head off of this and then cut the back in there. Really gets messy. If we can avoid it, I'd like to avoid it, but if it happens, it happens. As I suspected, this guy is putting up quite a fight. All right, so what's happened now is we have actually gotten it out of the nut in the back there. So it's free to spin. If I put a wrench on it, I can get this guy to spin. But because it's no longer in the nut, it's stuck in the sleeve is spinning, and the bolt doesn't want to come out. So it just sits there and spins. Now we got to try to get it out. Now because it did move, so it has been free of that bushing, I am not going I'm going to last resort cut. So what I can do is I can try to cut the bolt head off and then try to peel the leaf out. But this is a pretty rigid thing, so it won't bend, so the extension probably won't let that out. But so what I'm going to try to do first, and I've had very little luck with this in the past, is I'm going to try to hook on the back of this with a slide hammer and try to hammer it out. I don't think that's going to work, but I have to try it because that would be optimal. You know, sometimes we have miracles. I don't know. If that doesn't work, I am going to try to get this guy blazing hot and see if that does anything. It is a split bushing, so there's a gap in it. I can see up here, if you look in there, there's a gap. So I might try that. But otherwise, I'm going to keep going at this thing until we get it out, and then move on to the next one. Okay, so that came out easier than I expected. And a method that I had tried before, but I never had luck with. I took this pickle fork and I went in like that and then pushed and pulled while I was running the impact. So that worked out pretty well. And as you can see, the dirt and dust in the threads here, that's all what was in that sleeve. Now, luckily, this one doesn't look like it was rotted on there too bad, enough to get jammed in and come out. So that's a plus. I get to move on to the next side, and this is looking pretty good on this side. This is the side with the broken leaf. So here we go. All right, well, that worked out pretty well. That came out even easier than the other side. I mean, you can still see there was some rust in there. But once I got it going, that one came right out of the sleeve. I used the impact for some of the threads and everything. So that is really good. I was preparing for quite a fight on that tonight, and it didn't fight me. So that's good. Now I'm gonna move on to taking out the back ones, which I'm also, because I just discovered there's a little bit of a rust hole here. We are going to patch that up. So I am going to pull out the rear hitch. I'm going to pull out the gas tank and the muffler mount here and a few of these other things so that I can get in here and I can clean this area up so I can weld a patch on there. So that will give me the ability to take that shackle bolt out once that hitch is out of the way. So we're gonna get at it and go from there. Now that we have the gas tank out of the way, we can kind of look at what we've got to work with here. This back here, I think we can just clean that up a little bit, spray it with some rusted prohibitive stuff and try and stop that, or at least delay any damage there. But back here is the target area. Ooh, come on, catch up. Oh, there's a light in the background there. It's kind of washing out my camera. Anywho, I'll put my hand over it. There you go. So that is the, that's what's not going to let us pass inspection. And so we got to get a hold of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down in here. We're going to cut a section out of it and get rid of the old junk. And then we will weld in a new panel on there. So what I did was I cut that whole section out. I'm going to put another plate over top of this whole area, sink it in there, weld it tight, and make it look nice. But that's it for tonight, actually. I got to jet out, and I'll be gone for a couple days. It'll be like a couple seconds for you guys, but I'm headed out, so it'll be a little bit. But we'll cut a little section to go in there and then weld it up, and start putting it back together. I cut this out, cut that out, and then I'll take it over to a buddy's house that has a press brake, and we will bend up those edges. So we made up a little frame piece there. Let's go see how it fits. Okay, well, we have it all cleaned up now. That's ready to go in. I'm gonna weld that in there. I did add a little bolt here for the bump stop to mount to, because that bolt snapped off when I took it off. But I'm gonna go ahead and weld this up, and then we're done patching. We can start putting it back together. So here we go. A grinder and paint make me the welder I ain't. I am pretty good at the dad jokes though. The next order of business is I need to take these 4 nuts off of the U-joints, and then we can take the whole spring pack out. We're gonna let the axle rest on those jack stands while the body is resting on those jack stands. And that gives us the ability to take this spring pack out of here. We can leave the drive shaft connected, and we can leave the shocks connected, because the axle should stay pretty close to where it is. And then once we take these springs out, we'll put the new springs in, and then that'll keep it kind of where it is. It really shouldn't move around too much. Well, we have one that turned out to be a problem child. So this is one that you can actually see the bolt is stuck in the sleeve, and the sleeve is coming out of the shackle there. And it actually has pushed its way through the hole to remove the thing. Now what happens is there's rust buildup on the thinner part of the shaft, and and then as the threads back out of the nut, they kind of grind along and they create like a little bit of a like a mud, or basically they wedge themselves into that sleeve, and then the sleeve separates itself from the rubber, and it kind of wedges it in there, and it gets to that point, it gets to a certain point, and then it won't budge any further. It's like it, well, it's seized. I mean, that is not coming off of there right now. So as you can see, my efforts have gotten it to push through the hole. So the hole was a little bit elongated, and now that sleeve has pushed itself out. And this is one of those situations that I run into often on these Cherokees that that really can set a guy in the driveway to cursing pretty loud. And it, you know, the first couple of times that it happened to me, yeah, it was a pretty big issue because I didn't have the experience or the tools to know how to deal with it. But the good news on this end is, at this point, our nut inside the frame rail over here survived. So that came out, it pushed it all the way out like it should. Sometimes these guys will strip out, and that's an even bigger problem that is even harder for the guy in the driveway to deal with. But in this case, if you're working on yours and you're in your driveway and you have the bolt that's stuck in that sleeve and it has done this to the coil bucket here, or the joint, the shackle bucket here in the back, you want to get a grinding wheel and you want to grind this off as close as you can. You want to grind the bolt and the sleeve completely off. Then you can hammer this guy back out and get him out of there. You're going to replace this guy. You're probably installing a lift. You can hammer that guy out, replace him, get a new bolt, and then hammer this bucket back into where it belongs. Put a nice washer on it. If you have a welder, get a washer the size of the replacement bolt. Put the bolt in through the hole. Put a spacer in it, or put the old, you know, an old shackle in there. Clamp it down, put the washer on, and then weld the washer to the bucket. You're fine. That'll just tighten up this hole. It won't make a big difference here. That will work. If you don't have a welder, then you can get a nice big washer and clamp it and tighten it down really well, and it should be fine. You might end up wallowing that hole out a little bit, but you can always weld it at a later date if you do have issues with that. But this is a common thing that I've seen on Cherokees, and we're going to take care of this, and then we'll put a new one in there and we'll be fine to go. And I'm going to show you what one that has had this happen before looks like. So what I did with this one is I had that happen, the same thing, and I went and got a piece of metal. Instead of, you could just use a thin little washer, but I went and got a piece of metal and I welded it all the way around here. But this is that basic same thing happened to this, and I used just a big old, it was actually an old spring mount for a YJ that I cut off and then welded onto there. So that's an idea of what it might look like if you can weld it back on. That's what you can do, and it'll work just fine. You won't have any issues. If you do see some cracking back here at the back, so in that little crease, if you see some cracking, then I would kind of recommend that you get a welder and weld that up. I haven't seen that very often, but I have seen it once or twice where back here, that little guy there starts to crack up along the crease, and then you could see that continue to go. But there's usually other problems, like in that case, there's usually been rust all the way down in through here. This is normally something there, but well, this Jeep has some rust problems. But hopefully, if you're working on a Cherokee and you had that issue and you're here because of it, then that helps you solve it. It might seem like a bad day, but it's not as bad as it could be. We'll go with that. Well, my brother stopped by tonight. This is Luke. This is my brother. This is his Jeep. Because the work that we got to get done tonight is all dirty and gross and loud, we're going to make him do the hard work. And he's going to get started grinding out all the rust that's on there. And I am going to finish up this patch right here and get that taken care of. Here we go. So now that we've bent this back flat, what I ended up doing, if you didn't notice, I took this, put it in there, bent it. I used a hammer a little bit to knock it straight. You just kind of have to get creative with flattening this out so that this will sit flat then. So then what we'll do is I do have a little washer in there to kind of protect the rubber bushing. I am going to try to use this shackle again. And so then I'm gonna tighten this guy down, tighten that guy up there, get it about where it needs to be, make sure that I have the good movement in here, and then I'm gonna tack this on. And then once I've tacked this on, then I'm gonna take this shackle back out and then weld that in all the way. And then that'll be it. Then all we'll do is we'll paint this up and move on. That will do. And now we'll have a perfectly fine bucket. We can put the shackle back in, put the springs back in, but what we're gonna do now is we're gonna finish up with this rust junk here and paint this with some primer and then some paint and then some undercoating and get it so that that rust won't attack what we just did there. Well, we made good progress tonight. Luke is finishing up with some of the rust treatment under there, and we finished up with all the grinding and stuff that we need to do on the rust. I primered the 2 spots that were down to bare metal, and he's finishing up. Let me show you what we're working on here. So this is a rust converter stuff, and it is just going on there to give us a little bit of a treatment. Give it our best chance to make this Jeep last for many years to come, or at least 1 or 2. We'll see. That is what it looks like there with the new primer on there. Then we'll come back through and we'll paint all of this with a fresh coat of paint after that has been treated. And then we'll put some more of this rubberized undercoating stuff on there. And then maybe if we really want to get serious about it, we can always spray it with some fluid film. But that's up to him, because that'll be long after it's gone out of my garage. Here we go.
The next order of business is to take care of those old sagging springs that started this project to begin with. I'm going to put together a whole bunch of different springs that I had laying around the shop and go from there.
For the centering pin, because the old centering pins would be too short to fit, and ordering them, they're kind of expensive for what they are. It's just a pin just to center it. So what I do is I go to the store and I get a cap screw or a cap bolt, cap head bolt, grade 8, and then I grind the outer surface off so that it fits down in the centering pin hole, like that, right down in there. And then I'll use that. That's what we have here. The thing about this is you do end up having to drill out the center hole on some leaves. So as if it fits in some, but not others. So I drill out these holes so that this will fit, because I guess these packs used a 3/8 inch centering pin, and then these used a I guess that's probably 5/16 or something like that. It's just not quite large enough, so we drill it out to 3/8. That is our new leaf pack, kind of all cobbled together. This is an overload spring that came off of a random pack that I had around the shop. This is a main leaf off of a lifted pack that was like a 3-inch skyjacker or something like that. And then this is a main leaf off of an XJ pack that I cut the ears off. I cut the bushing stuff off of here. This is the second leaf off an XJ pack. and I don't have any other third or fourth leaf. I just use the overload. So we'll see how that works.
See our patch and our undercoating spray. Looking a lot better there.
Well, Luke's back. We're gonna put the final touches on this Jeep, throw the gas tank and hitch back on it, and then he's on his way. We've got everything else taken care of, the rubberized undercoating and the paint and everything's all done under there. So we're gonna throw this thing back together and get him on the road. We're all set? Well, that's it for tonight. Thanks for stopping out. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like that, hit subscribe. And if you're just passing through, well, thanks for stopping out. I hope to see you again some other time.